Okay, shall Ayumi share screens, Dominic?
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, so our first speaker is Ayumi Igarashi of University of Tokyo, and she'll be speaking on fair division of household chores.
Okay, thank you very much, Bill, for the introduction. And it is my pleasure to give a talk here. So today I'm going to talk about fair division of house chores. So recently we've been developing the app of dividing house chores for couples. And today I would like to share my experience of putting things into practice. Okay, so let me give you a background. So in Japan, the gender inequality is a quite serious problem, especially there is a tendency for women to spend more time on household chores, such as cleaning or shopping and childcare. And here is a Tokyo Metropolitan Survey 2021 describing the amount of time spent on household chores by women and men. The difference is quite big. It's like 5 hours per week. And also people often complain that there is no way to discuss with their partners how to divide house chores. And also some people feel that their work is acknowledged. So he or she may think that their partner is not aware of invisible chores. So, and this is not just about Japan. There are many papers about inequality in house chore division, and we have seen that inequality in house chore division can make people unhappy. So, for example, it can cause some significant stress to the couples, or it can lead women to consider breakup. So, to tackle this problem, we have been developing the app of dividing house chores for couples. Our app is meant to be a communication tool, not for fighting. And what we do is quite simple. So what we do is, based on the preference of the user, we visualize the current allocation and propose a suggestion that is fair and efficient based on the theory of fair division. This app is made through a group of people registered on Code for Japan, which is an NPO to promote civic technology. And this activity has been actually documented on a TV program of our national TV company, and it has broadcast on 29th of May 2022. It has some social impact. We have successfully attracted more than 10,000 users within the first month after launch. And these pictures are just the screenshots of the TV programs. And on the right, you can see me pretending to be a kind of intelligent mathematician. So, but returning to our problem of dividing house chores, how can we divide chores fairly? So if the chores are something homogeneous, then the fair solution would be to divide chores equally among the participants. But in practice, we may have different chores and people may have different preferences. So for example, some might prefer cooking over cleaning, but maybe others might prefer cleaning over cooking. So fair division is a growing field in mathematics and computer science that provides an elegant answer to this question. So basically, given the preference of the participants and some resource, the goal of fair division is to fairly distribute a resource among the participants. There are many applications, including division of task and property and so on, and it has been implemented successfully in these applications, including rent division calculator or split it and course match. Okay. So assigning courses to students. So today I would like to briefly go through the basic theory behind the problem of dividing chores, so not just household chores. And also I'd like to share my experience of putting pair division techniques into practice. Okay. So let me first go through the basic model. So the model is quite simple. So we have a set of agents and we have a set of discrete items. And we assume that each agent has a utility function. So, so since here we want to consider the problem of dividing household chores, let's say that each agent assigns some negative utility for each of the chores. And we assume that this utility function is additive. So the utility for each combination of the chores is just the sum of these numbers. And here, agent may have different utility functions. So some might maybe assign -4 to laundry, but maybe, maybe some might assign -1 to cooking, but others might assign maybe -3 to the same chore. And what we want to do is that given these utility functions, we want to find a location that satisfies certain fairness or efficiency notions. Okay. So how can we define fairness? So in the literature, central notion of fairness is in the literature on pair division is NB freeness. So we say that our location is NB free or fair if there is no NB. So for any pair of the agents, the utility I would get from my bundle is at least the utility I would get from the other bundle. Okay. So this notion of fairness is quite kind of a strong notion, but when we divide discrete items, we cannot really guarantee the existence of NB free allocation. So NB freeness is not really a reasonable goal here. So for example, when we want to divide one item between two agents, no matter how we allocate, this item to either one of the agents, there is an agent who gets nothing, so that there is an agent who envies the other. So the recent literature on pair division has therefore extensively looked into the approximate notion of NB freeness called NB freeness up to one good. And for the problem of dividing chores, we have this notion of EF1. So for any pair of the agents, either there is no NB. So either I do not NB the other, or there is an item whose removal eliminates the NB. So let's say we have two agents and two items, and if we allocate the whole items to one agent, this is not NB, EF1, because no matter how we eliminate an item, a single item, this agent who gets two items NBs the other. But if we allocate each of the items to the each of the single agents, then this allocation is EF1. Okay. So when agents have negative additive utilities, we can actually guarantee the existence of EF1 allocation. So we can guarantee the existence of allocation that satisfies this notion of fairness, and also we can compute EF1 allocation in polynomial time. However, achieving NB freeness, achieving EF1 is not enough in practice. In practice, we need to balance between fairness and efficiency. So for example, if someone is good at cooking, maybe we want to assign cooking to that agent. Pareto optimality is an efficiency notion that captures this concept. So basically, allocation is Pareto optimal if there is no reallocation, that makes everyone weakly better off and some strictly happier. So for example, if we maximize the sum of utilities, then this the corresponding allocation is Pareto optimal. So what we want is allocation that satisfies both fairness and efficiency. So more concretely, we want allocation to be EF1 and Pareto optimal. So when agents have non-negative additive utilities, we can actually guarantee the existence of allocation that satisfies both of the criteria. So in the influential paper by Yanis and others in 2016, they showed that allocation that maximizes the product of utility satisfies EF1 and Pareto optimality when agents have non-negative additive utilities. However, the same problem, the same problem for Chores is actually widely open. So we do not know whether EF1 and Pareto optimal allocation exists when the number of agents is at least 3. Although we know, I mean, it is guaranteed to exist when agents have some kind of specific, when agents have some specific utilities, specific type of utilities. But for our problem, for the problem dividing households among couples, we have only 2 agents, and we have actually an algorithm that achieves EF1 and Pareto optimality when agents have negative additive utilities. So this is the discrete version of the classical protocol called adjusted winner protocol. So it is originally it is for divisible goods and 2 agents, but recently Aziz et al. In Ichika 2019 discretized the protocol, and the discrete version computes an EF1 and Pareto optimal allocation of goods and Chores for 2 agents. So this includes the case when all items are Chores. Okay. So let me briefly explain how the algorithm works. So the idea is kind of quite simple. So what we do is that starting with Pareto optimal allocation, which can be very unfair, we are going to eliminate DMB step by step until we reach approximately fair allocation. So more specifically, there are 3 steps. So first of all, so let's say we have 2 agents, and then let's call one agent the loser and the winner. In the first step, we initially allocate all the Chores to the loser. So this is a Pareto optimal allocation, but it is very unfair. And then what we do is that we transfer an item from the loser to the winner until we reach an EF1 allocation. And to this end, what we want is that each step, what we want to maintain is Pareto optimality. So to this end, what we do is that to sort the items in terms of the ratio of utility of the loser and the utility of the winner. So you can see that on the, so for example, on the right, we divide, sorry, on the left, we divide 3 by 6, and so we get 1 over 2, and we divide 4 by 4, and we get 1, and so on. So you can see that on the left, we have Chores that are actually more liked by the winner and less liked by the loser. But on the right, we have Chores which are more liked by the loser and less liked by the winner. And what we do is that we transfer an item from the loser to the winner until we reach an allocation that is an EF1 from the viewpoint of the loser. And since each step can minimize the shock of the winner, it preserves Pareto optimality, and by the termination condition, we have an EF1 allocation. Okay. So this is actually what we use in this household Shore division app. But actually, in practice, this algorithm tends to allocate more Shores to the loser. So in our app, we actually choose who is a winner and loser uniformly at random. Okay. So that we don't really get complaints from the user. Okay. So let me go back to how our app looks like. So again, this is a communication tool for couples, not for fighting. And what we do is that based on the preference of the user, we visualize the current allocation and propose a suggestion that is Pareto optimal and EF1, which is actually returned by this discrete adjusted winner algorithm. Okay, and the English version is actually available, and if you can go to this link, then you can see how it looks like. So this is how our app looks like. So what we do is that first of all, couples select a set of shorts, something like cooking or cleaning and so on. And then each user enters the preference and then the current allocation. So for each of the shorts, they express whether they are currently responsible for the shorts or not. And then they express their positive or neutral or negative about the shore. And also finally, they express how much time it would take for them to complete the shore. Okay. And finally, we visualize the current allocation based on this preference and the time. Okay, so here we actually decompose the meaning of utilities or these utilities into two because it is often difficult to explain to non-expert what these utilities or utilities mean. So we ask users to enter both time and preference, and these utilities are computed by just multiplying these numbers. And we visualize allocation based on this definition of these utilities. So the pie chart represents how they split shorts from each agent perspective. And we make a proposal which is returned by, which is computed by the discrete adjusted winner algorithm. And so the additional feature is that since we don't, people may have their personal constraints, so people can actually extend shorts by clicking icons. Okay. So here is, let me see what time. Okay, so here is actually I would like to introduce some feedback from the users. So we have collected almost 100 answers to our questionnaire. And actually I think app is successful in terms of as a communication tool. So about 60% of the answers find the app useful as a communication tool. But in terms of fairness, in terms of how people find our proposed allocation, only 28% of the users, the answers find proposed allocation fair. And here's kind of more, here the reason for why why people think a proposal fair, and almost half of the users said that the proposal is fair, not because MB freeness or but because the proposal improves the allocation for the proposal improves the disabilities for both of the users. Okay. So just to to summarize, just to conclude. So yeah, so there's many open questions actually. So one of the key challenge we found is elicitation of preferences, as in most of the social choice applications, especially in this application domain. Preference are really combinatorial. People may have their personal. People have different opinions about how to combine chores. So some people might want to combine shopping and cooking and so on, but it is difficult to elicit such preference. Also, modeling, there might be a better modeling. For example, some people say that certain chores are better suited for some other agent. So maybe we can we can also model this problem that takes into account such constraint. Also, we can add some additional features. For example, we can suggest as sorting strategies, or we can maybe suggest a valid preference for ease of elicitation. And also, given, based on the feedback, I feel that in reality, if things are already kind of very unfair, it might be difficult for people to implement a fair allocation because they have to jump from one maybe unfair allocation to a very fair one. So maybe it would be nice to kind of have theory or some techniques to propose maybe a sequence of allocations that can eventually, or that can incentivize, or that can eventually lead to a fair allocation. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, everyone, let's unmute for a moment and thank Ayumi for a very interesting presentation.
Clap, clap.
On the chat, I see a first question that hasn't yet been answered is from Judy. Judy, you want to ask your question about truthfulness?
I wondered whether the greedy algorithm you've presented is truthful, or whether people have incentive to exaggerate their preferences.
So, actually, there is a very strong impossibility theorem in fair division that says that there is no mechanism that completely achieves, that completely allocates the items and satisfies truthfulness and approximate fairness notion. And this mechanism is not also truthful.
Thank you.
Peter Emda had a question as well.
Yes, I'm wondering about why the solution produced is Pareto optimal. I can see, or more or less sense, that if you restrict yourself to the divisions which are obtained by selecting a cut point in this ordering you create, that has some optimality condition, but you could imagine that there are selections which are non-consecutive, which are completely disregarded if you do this splitting in the order. So is that a proven result? Is that an heuristic?
So, so this algorithm, this algorithm is sort the items in terms of this utility ratio.
Yes.
So the ordering is not fixed. This is not fixed, and we can order so
Yes, I can see
okay.
that you're measuring the preferences. Based on that, you introduce this utility, and then you sort it based on that, and then you find a splitting point. But
Mhm.
I don't see why that would be a Pareto optimal solution compared to solutions which are obtained from a discontinuous selection.
So sorry, what do you mean by discontinuous selection?
Here you get only splits in a left part and a right part. But if you take an arbitrary subset that which contains a few bad elements and a few better ones, it might even come out better. So that's what I'm not convinced of.
I see. Yeah.
So I'm
yeah,
asking,
maybe
is it a heuristic or is it a proven result?
so there is a proof. There is a proof for this being Pareto optimal.
Okay.
So this is something we can prove.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know. Thanks.
Thank you.
Ayumi, I had a question. I know from earlier presentations of yours on this topic that you allow the couple to make adjustments to the proposal produced by your app. That's true, correct?
Yes, you mean like by clicking icons and exchanging shorts.
Exactly. So I wondered whether there's anything you've noticed that's systematic about that final adjustment that suggests particular ways in which the algorithm is not totally grabbing what the couples would see as best. In other words, can you extract any useful information in general about those changes, from those changes?
So since we didn't really collect data, we don't know how people actually exchange. I mean, this is something we should maybe do some, I mean, we should really follow, but there are actually several comments or from the users that says that since we have a very finer list of households and we assume additive preferences, and we don't really take into account combination. Some people complain that it might not be efficient at all. So maybe this is something people try to adjust.
Interesting. I had two guesses. One is that it's based on failure of additivity. And the second is it's based on when people actually see a collection of chores assigned to them, they decide that they hadn't understood their own preferences very well.
I see. Yeah. That's also, I mean, possible. Really. So maybe once they enter input and then see proposal, they might want to change the preference.
Right.
Exactly. Thank you.
We have a few more minutes for questions. So if anyone has any additional questions, feel free to unmute and ask your question.
I have a question. So you randomized over the identity of winner and loser at the start, and you said that this means that people won't complain. But of course, they don't need to complain ex ante. They might still complain ex post. And I wonder whether there's some better mechanism, not adjusted winner, that also gets PO and EF1 for two agents. I guess it's more a comment than a question.
Yeah, so it depends on how we define better, but we can of course compute, for example, Lakshmi allocation that, or I don't know. Yeah, I'm not really familiar with some, I don't know, better randomized mechanism for this particular case for the two agent case. So yeah, maybe there might be something, but yeah, I can only, maybe I can just mention that there is we can maybe compute Lexi-mean allocation that satisfies Pareto optimal and EFX. And also, I want to note that this randomization, even though we randomize between winner and loser, it may not satisfy ex ante MB freeness. So there is a counterexample.
Yeah, I meant people can still complain. I mean, someone will be selected to be the loser, right? And that loser can complain afterwards. So not just complaining if it's not NV free. So is there a reason you chose adjusted winner rather than Lexi-min?
Yes. So yeah, since it maybe the main reason is explainability. So we can explain. Maybe explain this to everyone, right? So as long as they know how to divide things and sort things, so it should be
Okay, thanks.
understandable.
Yeah. And I guess you only have very few possible utility values, so the divisions, there are not that many divisions that are possible. Thanks.
Right. That's also true.
We have time for perhaps one last question.
Yeah, can I just pipe in here just based on what Dominic was asking? So you do let the users know which one was the loser versus the winner, because you could sort of hide that as part of the description of the algorithm. Like it's thinking of it more as a black box, and then just give the allocation. So the users do know which one was considered the loser and the winner that you chose during the execution of the algorithm. Is that right?
People don't know who is a loser or who is a winner.
Okay. They only know in the sense that they might have slightly more chores than what the what their opponent does. Okay. Yeah, I see.
Okay, let's thank Ayumi one more time.
Okay. Yes, thank you very much.
And we'll move to our coffee break. Alex, you should stay out of the coffee break so we can set up screen sharing for you. See you in 10 minutes, everyone. Enjoy your coffee.
Okay, shall I share my screen?
Okay, welcome back, everyone. Alex, you want to share your screen?
Yeah.
So our next speaker, Alex Voudouris, will speak on metric distortion of multi-winner voting. It's all yours, Alex.
Thank you. All right, so yeah, hi everyone. I'm going to talk about the metric distortion of multi-winner voting, which is a joint work with Yannis Karagiannis and Nisa Alxa. That's a paper that was published in AAAI 2022 and very recently was accepted in AIJ. Here we focus on the following setting. So we have a set of N agents, also referred to as voters, and a set of M alternatives, also referred to as candidates. So we have an election. And we assume that all participants are represented by points in a metric space. So over here in this figure, I have the agents represented by red circles and the alternatives represented by blue squares. So we are somewhere in a space. And we have the distances between agents and alternatives. So over here by DI or DIX, I have the distance between agent I and alternative X. And since we're in a metric space, the triangle inequality holds, which means that it's better, it's closer, it's faster to go from I directly to X than going from I to some other alternative Y, going to some other agent J, and going to some to the alternative X. Now, this is a different form of the triangle inequality that someone might be used to. That's because we're only focusing on distances between agents and alternatives. We disregard distances between agents and alternatives and alternatives. But anyway, you can show this triangle inequality by two applications of the classic triangle inequality. Okay, so we're in a metric space or a pseudometric space. That is, it's actually that. We assume that the agents rank the alternatives from closest to farthest, breaking ties arbitrarily. So we are given a strict ordering. We don't know that is, we don't know the actual distances. We don't have access to the metric space. We only have access to these rankings that are consistent to the metric space. And we are going to say that agent I prefers an alternative X over an alternative Y if agent I is closer to X than to alternative Y. So this is consistency to the metric space. Now, before talking about multi-winner voting, let's talk a little bit about single winner voting. Single winner voting, what we would like to do is that we would like to identify the best alternative. Now, what best means is up to debate, but here it is the alternative that minimizes the social cost, which is the total distance of agents from the chosen alternative. And if we have access to the metric space, if we knew all of the distances, we could, of course, compute the optimal alternative. Just for every alternative, sum all the distances of the agents from that alternative and pick the alternative that has the minimum such distance. The trick is that we don't have access to the metric space. We are only given access to the preference rankings of the agents. And hence, we are going to lose some efficiency. We might not be able to identify the best alternative. So we can, our aim is to compute a single alternative to approximately minimize the social cost, to be as close as possible to the best alternative, even though we only have access to the preference rankings. In other words, we want to minimize what is called distortion, which is similar to the approximation ratio from worst case analysis. It is the worst case overall possible instances that you can have of the expected social cost of the alternative that you choose based on voting rules that are given as input the preference rankings of the agents for the alternatives, over the minimum social cost over all alternatives that you could have if you had the full access to the metric space. And here this is the expected because we might have voting rules that are randomized in general. So we are going to have a distinction between deterministic rules and randomized rules. Now, for single winner voting, there is a complete picture of deterministic rules. We know that the distortion is exactly 3. There has been a series of papers trying to show exactly this bound that was very recently shown by Gazellis et al. Fox 2020, and also a very recent paper that showed that there is a simpler rule that achieves this bound in its grade 2022. Actually, the paper by Gazellis et al. Was presented in this video seminar. And for randomized rule is actually an open question. What is the correct bound for the distortion? It is a little bit, we know that's a little bit above 2 and a little bit below 3, but we don't know the actual bound. And now the distortion has been studied a lot in many different contexts, both in single winner voting and matching and many other problems. Together with some colleagues, Elliot, Aris, and Nisak, we wrote a survey on this, but there are also workshops and recent tutorials that have presented most of these results in other formats. So I'm not going really to talk more about related work. You can have a look at this survey if you want. Okay, so now let's go and talk a little bit about multi-winner voting. Similar to the case of single winner voting, where we wanted to identify the best alternative, here we would like to identify the best committee of K alternatives, where K is some value more than 1, an integer more than 1 and less than m, which is the number of all alternatives. So we want a subset of alternatives. And again, it's up to debate what it means for a committee to be the best. And here in our work, we define the Q cost of an agent for a committee, where Q is an integer from 1 to K, such that the Q cost of an agent of a committee is the distance of the agent from her Qth favorite alternative in the committee. Here are some examples. If I have Q equals 1, then I care about the minimum distance. I care for my distance from my favorite member of the committee. If I have Q equals K, I care about my distance from the worst member, in my perspective, from the committee. And in general, you can have like Q equals K over 2, which is the median distance, and any other possible statistic that you want to define. Okay, so that's what we have as the individual cost of an agent for a committee. And now our goal is that given the preference of all agents for the alternatives, we want to compute a committee of K alternatives for any value of K to approximately minimize the total Q cost, also known as Q social cost, but I'm going to refer it as total Q cost here, of the agents. And similarly, we can refine now the distortion. Again, it's the worst case overall possible instances of the expected total Q cost for the chosen committee that you choose based on a voting rule that is given the preference of the agents for the alternatives over the minimum total Q cost of the role committees that you could have. And let me say here, if I don't say it another point, that even if you had like knowledge of the metric space, it might be and be hard to even to find the best committee because, for example, for Q cross 1, this is the K median problem for a large K. Okay, so even if you have full access, it's not easily solvable. Now, here's an overview of the results that we have in terms of the distortion. We have a trichotomy in terms of the relationship between Q and K, and we have bounds for both deterministic and randomized rules. We saw that for when Q is at most K over 3, it doesn't really matter what you're going to do. In the worst case, you're going to have infinite distortion. When you're between K over 3 and K over 2, you can achieve a linear bound in the number of agents, and this is a tight bound. And where you are strictly more than K over 2, Q is strictly more than K over 2, then if we have deterministic rules, we can, in exponential time, and for general n, we can achieve best possible bound of 3. We can do this in polynomial time if we have a constant number of agents. But in general, we saw an upper bound of 9 in polynomial time, and it's an open question whether what's the correct bound over here. And for randomized, we can show that the randomized dictatorship, there is a proof that extends the proof for single winner voting and gets the same upper bound 3 minus 2 over n. Okay, so that's an overview of the results that we have. Now let me talk a little bit quickly about all of them. So when we have Q less than K over 3, we show that the distortion is unbounded for any voting rule, either deterministic or randomized. Here is a very simple example for the edge case, Q equals 1 K over 3, K equals 3. So n equals 4 agents, let's call them V1, V2, U1, U2, and 4 alternatives X1, X2, Y1, Y2. Okay, so that's the setting that we have. Here, the preference of the agents. The first 2 agents, V1 and V2, they rank the X alternatives first, X1 better than X2 for V1 and X2 better than X1 for V2, and then the Y alternatives in the same order. And U1 and U2 have the Y alternatives first, Y1 better than Y2 and Y2 better than Y1 for the 2 agents, and then the X alternatives ranked from X2 to X1. And now this is what we have as input for any voting rule. And the question is there a voting rule that can achieve like a finite distortion based on these preference rankings? Now here's a consistent 1D metric space, which means that if I look at the agents and the preference over the alternatives, I'm going to get the previous preference rankings that I had. So for example, V1, all of these V1, V2, X1, X2 are positioned at 0, or if you don't like ties, just the epsilon apart. So V1 prefers X1 to X2. I'm just breaking the tie in favor of X1 over here. And then later on, we have in the preference ranking Y1 and Y2. Okay, so this is indeed a consistent metric space. You can verify it if you want. So what happens now is that recall that I want to have a committee of 3 members, and all of the agents care about their favorite member in the committee. So I could have a 0 cost by creating this committee X1, Y1, and Y2. That's because agent U1 is going to have a 0 cost because their favorite alternative is in the committee. U2 is going to have a 0 cost because their favorite alternative is in the committee as well. And V1 and V2 both are essentially epsilon apart or 0 if you allow ties from X1. So this is a perfect committee. Everyone gets a total cost of 0. If you get more than 0 cost, you would have infinite distortion. So if we do want to have a finite distortion, we need to output this committee when we are given this metric space, which is consistent to the preference rankings. Now, another consistent metric, though, to the preference rankings is this one. And over here, if we do output this committee, X1, Y1, and Y2, then we have a cost of 1 because of agent V2, because they have this distance over here from X1. However, we could get a 0 cost if we included X1, X2, and one of the Y alternatives. So either we get finite distortion here, but infinite distortion here, or we get finite distortion here, but infinite distortion here. In any case, we get infinite distortion. And it doesn't matter if you want to randomize. Okay, so, and this holds for k equals 3, q equals 1 here, but you can extend this example for any value q that is at most k over 3. Now, when we are between k over 3 and k over 2, we can do something better. We can have like linear distortion. And here's the voting rule that achieves this. We call it polar opposites. Hopefully it's clear why we call it like that. We choose an arbitrary agent, doesn't matter who. And then we choose another agent J, whose qth favorite alternative is the worst for agent I. Okay, so for all agents other than I, we look at the qth favorite alternative of all the agents, and we pick the one that has the qth favorite alternative that I, out of all the set of qth favorite alternatives, consider it the worst. And then we output an arbitrary committee that includes the top q alternatives of I, the top q alternatives of J, and if there is space in the committee, we include arbitrary alternatives. It doesn't really matter. So the intuition is that picking an arbitrary agent I, we try to find another agent J to cover as much as possible of the metric space. Based on the definition of the q cost, this should be based on the distance from the qth favorite alternative. Okay, I won't bother you with the details of the proof, but you can show that this achieves a distortion of at most n, or some function of n, actually. And there is also a corresponding lower bound that shows that indeed we can get asymptotically tight linear bound in this case. And finally, when we have q more than k over 2, we can achieve a constant distortion. And this is done as follows. We can show that the q cost of the agents form a new metric over all agents and possible committees of k alternatives. So we transform, we go from a metric space between agents and alternatives to a metric space between agents and committees. And of course, this has an exponential number of points because you can have an exponential number of committees. However, this means that we can run single winner voting rules to decide the committee if we can view every committee as a new alternative, a pseudo alternative. So in exponential time, because we have exponential number of committees, we can get distortion free by either of the best possible rules of Kacelis et al., Gizikari and Kempe. So the question is now, can we do better than exponential time? Can we do, what can we do for normal time? If we have a constant number of agents, we can get a 3. But in general, we can get something a little bit worse than 3, but still a constant. And here's how we do this. First of all, we prove that the best out of all the committees formed by the top k alternatives of each agent. So for every agent, we look at the top q alternatives. So for every agent, we have one possible committee consisting of the top k alternatives of that agent. So we have n possible committees. So one of these, we don't know which, but one of these is a 3 approximation of the overall optimal committee. Okay, so there exists one of them that is 3 approximate. And now we have n possible committees. We can run a single winner voting rule on this set of n possible committees. So we get a 3 approximation of the 3 approximation. So we get a 9. Okay, so this is in polynomial time. General n, we get an at most 9 distortion over here. Now some open problems. These are all the results that I have. Maybe we have some other minor results as well, but these are the main ones. Here's some open problems which are more important here, I guess. So first of all, can we close the gap between the 3 and the 9 when we have q more than k over 2 using a polynomial time voting rule? Something that we have shown is that our technique, which is that we reduce to single winner voting in this particular way, cannot lead to a distortion better than something like 5.2. If we could do this, we would show that P equals NP. So it's simply hard to go below that with this technique. But this doesn't mean that there is no other technique that can actually do something better. And here's an unexplored idea, which might seem trivial, but we haven't done it. So why not build the committee by repeatedly choosing an alternative, or repeatedly build the committee by run some single winner voting rule on the reduced instance that you have and build the committee. This is in spirit of a previous paper by Goel et al. In Netcon, which showed that if you have the cost of an agent for a committee to be the sum and not this q cost that we have over here, you could get a 3. So we don't know whether an idea like this can work. I think at some point I saw the lower bound of 4, but anyway, can we improve upon the 9? Another direction, what if we have like more than ordinal information? Over here, our input is the ordinal preference of the agents for the alternatives, and we have all of these set of results. What we have more than just that? What if we have some information about the metric space, which can be found by queries? Can we prove upon the unbounded distortion where we have Q at most K over 3, or the linear distortion we have Q being between K over 3 and Q over 2? That's an interesting direction, in my opinion. And actually, it has already been considered for Q equals 1 in a master thesis by a master student at Waterloo. But this is only for Q equals 1. So what happens for all of the other cases for the values of Q? Now, another direction, social objectives that are different than the total cost of the agents. So over here, we have focused on the social cost, but what happens if I have like something different? We can actually, if we inspect our proofs, we can show that we can get similar bounds if we try to minimize the maximum cost among all agents. But besides the social cost, besides the maximum cost, there are many different objectives that one can define and can study in this setting. And finally, what about different definitions of individual cost? So here we define the Q cost, so the distance from the Q favorite member of the committee. There has been previous work that they have shown bounds for the sum of distances from all members of the committee. But what happens if I have something intermediate, like the sum of distances from top Q alternatives? Or what if I have like a weighted average of the distances from the committee members, and based on the weights that I choose, I get a different individual cost definition, and we could have some parametric results. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Okay, let's unmute and thank the speaker. I don't see any questions yet on the chat. If anyone has a question, feel free to unmute and ask. Go ahead.
Right, so yeah, hi Alex. So one question is, are your lower bounds all on the line? And more generally,
yeah.
Do you think, okay, so in terms of bridging the upper bounds for the constants in the case of large Q, do you think that maybe if you consider just the line, maybe there is some promise to come up with something that doesn't use this sort of reduction sort of thing?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I guess. I haven't thought about it, but I guess that if you focus on the line, maybe you can easily show, not easily, but maybe you can show something. And I think that whatever you show on the line should hold for any metric space, but maybe the generalization is not obvious.
I was thinking maybe something along the lines of some sort of statistics, different statistics, because you can do those on the line, median sort of like things.
Yeah, it's not even clear what this means though, because even though the cost is based on statistics, you are actually looking at the total cost of the agents based on that. Okay, yeah. But yeah, I'm not saying it doesn't work. I mean, maybe, yeah. But yeah, if yeah, on the line it should be easier than in the general metric space. But whatever holds for the line should also hold for any metric space, as it is usual in this in the distortion in general in metric space. Yeah.
Themistocles, I think you had a question.
Hi, Alex. So my question is, so you mentioned lower bounds, a linear lower bound when Q is between K over 2 and K over 3.
Yeah.
So is this among all mechanisms, or is it for your particular mechanism?
No, among all mechanisms. So, so what this means is that there is a mechanism that has an upper bound, linear, or a function of n, like it's 2n plus 1, I don't remember, something like that. And there is a lower bound for all deterministic n randomized mechanisms that is n over 2, something like that, for all mechanisms. Yeah, so it covers everything.
All right, so yeah, so it's
tight, yeah.
Yours is the best that we can do.
Asymptotically, right? So it's not
yeah.
Exactly. So the upper bound is 2n, something like that, and the lower bound is n over 2. It's not exactly tight, but asymptotically it's tight. And I don't know if you care about the constants in these functions of n, but if you care, it's not tight, but asymptotically it is, yes.
Okay, okay, thanks.
Peter van Emden, you had a question?
Yes, I'm curious. You were observing in the beginning that the preference doesn't indicate a true metric, but you can infer from the preferences a crude approximation from the metric that what is less preferred is farther away. So select some increasing functions on the order of preference to the distance and then do metric calculations. Has such a kind of a heuristic been tried for the problem?
No. This is not what happens. So I'm given the preference rankings. So for every agent, I'm given a ranking of the alternatives. So
Yes.
for example, an agent says alternative 1 is better than alternative 2, better than alternative 3. I know that there exists some underlying metric that is consistent to this preference, but I don't know what this metric is.
Yes, that I
So
understand.
my mechanism should work for any possible metric. And I take the worst case over all this. That's it.
But what happens if you just pick a metric which is consistent,
Okay.
do the calculations for that metric, and then look at the outcome? How far up? Is that a very stupid and bad heuristic?
No, it's not. I mean, if you have shown that the distortion is unbounded, like we have in some cases, whatever you do in a metric space, there must be another metric space that gives you unbounded anyway. But in general, if you have like a constant upper bound for all metric spaces, it doesn't really matter what you do. I'm not sure if someone has seen exactly what you say, but since all of these results are worst case and cover everything, if you have like a constant upper bound, which is tight, it doesn't really matter what you do.
Okay. Then if I may, I had another question which I think answered in the last slide.
Mm-hmm.
We're focusing on a single value of Q, but the quality can depend on the Q distances for various Qs.
Yeah.
And some weighted average.
Yeah.
And what if you have a full weighted average over all Q?
So you mean overall the alternatives that are in a committee?
Yes. So for the
I
first
don't
Q
know.
is 1, you have one weight, and for Q is 2, you have a different weight.
Yeah.
Let's say decreasing.
Yeah, I don't know. These are all different individual courses, which are interesting to study. I don't know what the answers are.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, I apologize for murdering the pronunciations here, but Argyris, you had a question.
Okay, it was excellent. Thanks, Alex. Can you go to the previous slide?
Yeah.
So you say here that okay, you have a polynomial. You can find 9. You can achieve a distortion 9 in polynomial time and 3 in exponential time.
Mm-hmm.
Is it possible that there is a lower bound on what we can do in polynomial time?
That's a very good question. I don't know.
Because I cannot understand what it would mean. What it would
So
mean.
usually,
become.
so what we have here, this that what I say that our technique cannot go better than 5.2. This is a computational lower bound. It's an MP hardness problem. But usually all of the lower bounds here are informational. You cannot achieve something because of information. And typically in the distortion, you can achieve the best possible bound with polynomial time algorithms. So I don't know whether there exists some type of result in the literature, not just here, that says that in exponential, it would be MP hard to achieve distortion that much without specifying a class of mechanisms. Just cover everything. I don't know whether such a result exists. But if you focus on mechanisms and techniques like here, yeah, maybe you can show something like that. But I don't know whether usually it's informational lower bound. And it's actually very interesting that in distortion, you can achieve the best possible lower bound with polynomial time algorithm usually, even though in some cases the algorithms are complicated.
Yeah, I see. Thanks.
We do have a few more minutes if there are other questions. Meanwhile, while we wait for those to percolate up, let me mention that we do not yet have finalized plans for the November edition of this seminar. So we will be getting back in touch with you as soon as we have finalized those. So I can't give you a date or a precise list of speakers at this point. Any further questions? If not, let's unmute and thank both our speakers for a very nice seminar today.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
And
Bye-bye.
see you again soon. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.